with a man or bear?
Men are scary.
Been watching you, following you of sorts, in a good way.
The bear stopped. It stopped in its tracks. We stared at each other for about 5 seconds, and then you know what? The bear left.
Out in the middle of nowhere, nobody would ever hear our screams.
My mom got mauled by a bear.
That's crazy because I just talked to the bear's friends and they all said that he didn't do it.
It's making everything I say seem sinister, which it's not intended to be. What's up?
I'm sorry.
No. Sorry, no. There's nowhere to go.
But you guys would rather run into a bear than me.
I would like to go in your room. And I suspect that maybe you might say no, and yet I also feel like maybe you wouldn't dare.
Are you sick of this conversation yet? Is this past the point of being a trend to talk about? Good, because I think that we need to have a healthy retrospective here. And you know what? You actually voted for it too, so that's why we're talking about this topic a bit later on, because I think that people needed to calm down a little bit, and there is so much to genuinely unpack here. If you're not online all the time, even though news sources have indeed covered this, the topic at hand is around this question that was posed to women. Would you rather be lost in the woods with a bear or a man? And from a lot of digging and checking, it does actually seem that Screenshot HQ was the one that started this trend on TikTok by asking random women in the street. Also, please never approach me with a microphone in the street, my goodness. Ugh. Let's have a look at the comment section, because that's the part that really interests me. The worst thing a bear can do is unalive me and they'll leave my body alone afterwards. A bear won't attack me, then tell his friends that I liked it. Sheesh. We got some problems going on here. So I embarked on a scary deep dive into Reddit, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and looked at the comment sections for everything, and my brain was definitely rotting, so please give this video a like. If you're aware of this topic, this video will be a little bit dark, but we're not getting into any grisly details. Better pun. But as always, there are going to be resources in the description box if you need them, and also I do implore you to wait until the end to comment, because there's so much to actually unpack here.
Good boy. Good boy. Close it. Close it.
Look, the closest I've ever come to a bear is at Family Bar on K Road.
Boots the house down, mama, yes, God.
I've only lived in the UK and here in Aotearoa, and we are not blessed with bears. And I think that you recognise by now that I'm not really a wild nature person, I'm much more like Meredith. But as Kate Lister reports, bears generally leave humans alone and will alter their behaviour to avoid us where possible. In fact, we pose a far greater danger to them than the other way around. According to Western Wildlife Outreach, 50,000 black bears are legally hunted in North America each year alone. As I've seen women say in comment sections, the bears just want to be left alone like women do. From people that actually do live around bears and do actually go out into wild nature quite often, and coming up against bears is something which is not actually that out of the ordinary for them, they're picking the bear. More often than not, bears don't actually attack unless they're hungry or you're near their cubs. And you know, when you're going into the woods, you are actually on their territory, so can we be all that angry at them? We can recognise that when bears come into populated areas, that is quite risky. Like, I can show you this terrifying video of this man easily getting thrown down by a bear, which people were actually mocking the man for, by the way, which was very odd to see. But what happened to that bear afterwards was it actually got euthanized. There was a very tight control around bears. And if you want to get into the statistics debate, you can just watch a video like from Dad Chats, who is on Instagram and TikTok.
Not to mention that most states have laws on self-defense against bears that are, let's just say, very favorable to the human being being attacked. Whereas, by the way, in the United States, when a woman who brings a legal claim of self-defense, they are 2 times more likely to be found guilty of a crime themselves.
I'll link the video for you down below. It goes deep into the statistics for everything and unpacks everything. And honestly, I care so little for people trying to dissolve this into those arguments again, as you should have had every single one of them weeks ago by this point, as shown in the intro. I mean, I think that we can all agree that if it was any of these bears that we're seeing on the screen now, we would absolutely be picking the bear, right? Especially this little one here. Look at them with their little balloon. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, that's so... See, everybody wants to hug the bear. If not friend, then why friend-shaped? But we know not all bears are like this, and not all bears are nice, right? Anyway, so I asked you a question in the poll, and as of filming on the 11th of May, would you rather find yourself alone in the woods with a bear or a man? I specifically said you can't set any parameters, you can't choose the man, you can't choose the bear, everything is random. No, you would be, as Ziegler says,
Totally alone.
81% voted for the bear, 19% voted for the man. And you know what? Whatever answer you chose, I'm going to respect that answer because I asked a question, I gave you 2 choices, and you made your vote. But the part where people were accepting people's choices to a question that they were asked, that hasn't really been happening now, has it? This is the real thing that we're unpacking today, the messy aftermath. For example, this picture went viral where a woman was hiking on a trail and doing some yoga. They wrote, "This was while we were waiting for the bear to move off a track. No fluffing way would be this chill with a man lingering nearby." To which the response was, well, if it was a man lingering nearby, you'd be asking for it with those poses. Illustrating the exact reason why so many women are voting for bear, because you can't even do sports out by yourself, not bothering anybody, without being made unsafe. If 1 in 3 women were getting mauled by bears, we'd agree that we have a bear problem. And yes, that is sadly the global statistic for violence against women, 1 in 3. And that is what the very obviously super broad question is actually about. This is a thought exercise, and it's actually about violence against women. These thought experiments have existed for many years to unpack deep-rooted issues in the world. You may remember this one from 2021. Which of the following animals, if any, do you think you could beat in a fight without weapons? 6% of Americans believe that they could beat a grizzly bear.
The great animal, Your Highness.
Oh, big great. It's large and has fur.
And if you don't know, grizzly bears are actually one of the most dangerous kinds of bears in the world, along with polar bears. Oh, don't let the Coca-Cola adverts fool you. This is the fur of a killer, Bella. 8% also thought they could win against an elephant. No. And 61% thought they could beat a goose. Have you ever seen a goose's teeth and when they're actually protecting their children? I would never take an angry goose on, okay? You can Google the images yourself because I'm not putting myself through that to show you. The key difference between these 2 questions is the man or bear question isn't asking who could you beat in a fight. This is asking who you would prefer to come across if you were alone in the woods, a man or a bear. You cannot specify the type of bear nor the type of man for that matter. And it's this unknown which is actually where the fear gets created. Your knee-jerk reaction may say man because you'd hope that we're all humans so we'd help each other, right? Well, if you're a woman, being lost in the woods with a man is actually deeply terrifying when you apply context to the situation. And this question was directed at women. Like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Wild, I've used clips of it before, but you could come across this kind of guy, or you could come across this kind of guy, and you don't know who it's going to be. If you haven't seen that movie, I do recommend checking it out, it's very good. And isn't it odd that the immediate thought that people go to is, who would you rather be attacked by, a bear or a man? Why is it that violence automatically comes up when men are answering this question? There's an assumption that women are helpless without men, like this tweet which circulated really highly shows. From Real Talk with Mo, the man v bear debate is easy. A woman should definitely pick the man. The bear would eat her, it's not going to help her one bit. A man she can bond with to a point where he will work with her to survive in the woods. If she used her feminine traits, he would hunt, build and protect, as men have done for centuries. Women have that power over men. Men will literally go to war for women. The way my eyes nearly rolled to the back of my head when I read that, my goodness. One of my favourite replies was, if I survive a bear attack, people would believe me. If I survived grapes, I'd have to submit to invasive testing and prove it. You made a qualifier of if. You'd only protect if, not just because she's a fellow human. You are exactly why we choose the bear. And this is the whole thing, right? Because it's actually showing the underlying misogyny.
I mean, is there an epidemic of women being attacked in the woods? Because it's like, I mean, like I have, like GPS, I could help you.
This guy was hiking in the woods and he was answering the question and just seemingly earnestly saying, like, what is so wrong? I've got almonds, I've got all this stuff, and you know, because I like to try and see the best in people, I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is actually where he's coming from. And then you have a look at the comment section and his replies. Oh, no. And then I clicked on his profile and I found another video from him which went even worse because he was trying to say that he's completely against prejudice and that was his main problem. And it's like, no, that wasn't actually the thing though, right? You're trying to say it's that, but it's not actually that. When it comes to the scary and really nasty comments, I've been clicking on the profiles of these people to see, you know, what they're all about. 90% of these people saying the most violent, sexist, hateful stuff. They don't even have any content. They don't even have a profile. They are super anonymous. So you don't know what these men are even like, except for the fact that you know that they're a man. And this is why the unknown is scaring us even more. So they're just spouting this violence and anger and we don't even know who they are. So this is further leaning into the issue if you don't know the guy that you'd actually come across in the woods. Scarily, there were actually men relishing in the idea that a woman would come across a grizzly or a polar bear and that they would then be begging that they'd chosen a man. The immediate violent response and relishing in that is actually really scary. And even grosser, so many men were actually making bestiality remarks. And seriously, if your mind immediately thinks of a woman alone in the woods and you straight away go to violence or sex, that's exactly why we're picking the bear.
Show off your hips and legs. A tight little ass.
Please don't say that.
Can't a guy give a girl a compliment anymore?
Even more disturbingly, people have gone the extra steps to actually make memes about this. And this does require a bit of effort to the stuff that people have made. And I actually can't show you most of them because YouTube would not show you this video, okay? But trust me when I say it's incredibly graphic. And then there were also men actually saying that, oh, I would go hug the bear afterwards because they had to spend 10 days alone in the woods with women. And misogyny be misogyny, and what can I say? There are TikToks celebrating the fact that bears would get to eat 1,000 women a day. This dude is saying that the woman made the wrong choice by not choosing him. This man was incredibly angry that women were choosing a bear over men.
You ain't watched enough nature documentaries.
And so an ecology major actually responded.
And when those attacks do happen, it's usually when someone provokes a bear.
I really enjoyed their response. That's why I'm giggling a bit, because it was very good. And then this guy was bringing up the proximity issue, because we come across men every day in our lives, and are we always feeling unsafe? Do they always attack us? And it's like, actually, if we're out alone, even if we're with a group of people, we are actually feeling unsafe, which is something I'll be getting into later. But the thing is, the question isn't about you specifically, my dear. If you are genuinely a nice person and you wouldn't harass, stalk, you wouldn't essay someone or defend someone who has essayed someone, then this isn't actually about you in the slightest. The whole point of this question is that it's intriguing enough to actually get people thinking about the real lived issues and actually open that opportunity for this conversation to happen. However, the listening part hasn't really been happening, because that is the entire point of the question, is to help people to listen and understand why people are scared, why there are so many issues. Because the thing is that if you're just trying to do a PSA about DV or something, most people will just tune out of it. But when you actually have a provocative question, more people are going to engage with it, and that's the entire purpose. It has just shown a very dark underbelly. Even taking a moment to realize the fact that women genuinely were thinking this through, pausing and then answer bear, may signal that there's something deeply wrong with the way that society is right now. The fact that to be alone with a random man somewhere in the woods is a frightening prospect shows our lived experiences. It shows the statistics of the world around us, and it also shows that when other people aren't around to enforce a social contract to actually not attack women, we don't trust that to stay in place a lot of the time. Many of us have sadly been in situations where we've been harassed, essayed, SH'd, and people are actually around and it still happened. As in, there were people around and nobody stepped in to stop it. Or when you actually try and report it to the police, you get not believed. You have to go through incredibly invasive questions, and everyone's like, oh, well, were you drinking? What were you wearing? And all of the line of questions that I've brought up so many times in the past. Victims aren't believed. Or people are deemed not to be attractive enough to have this stuff happen to them, which is something I will be talking about in my next video as well. But instead of hearing any of that or stepping back and evaluating when women say no, like what's happened here, that decision gets ignored and instead gets yelled at. When we say we're scared, it's because we are. And the thing is, it's not all men. No one is saying it's all men. It's the fact that it's random. And the thing is that so many men are actually really understanding the question too, and they are unpacking it, they are listening, and they're trying to actually educate other men, and they're doing really great videos. But the thing is, when I look at their comment sections as well, I see men mocking them, see men saying that they're whipped, see men saying that they're weak. It's like they've broken the bro code, and this is not the thing to do, to go telling on other guys, because, you know, it's bros before hoes. Quite simply, it's seen as betrayal when men are calling out the bad behaviour of others, and that is very scary, because they're actually trying to create a community and do some good.
You know what? I'd rather have her get mauled by a bear, because it's a quick death.
Don't even say that.
Compared to getting abused and harassed by some random man.
Do you think I want to see my youngest daughter snared by some fish-eater's hook?
The fathers and partners' responses. This is an incredibly interesting offshoot to me, because what women were actually doing was asking their dads or their partners or husbands or whatever what they would pick for their partner.
All alone, no city in sight, nothing, but we're alone with a bear or a man. It's not a trick question.
A bear.
A bear?
And if you pause right here, you can see the moment where his heart breaks, where he realizes what he's just had to choose between.
Because a bear might leave you alone. A man
Perverted.
A policeman made this TikTok where he said that he would choose the bear as well. And then look at this one. The faces, the winces, the need for more information, the issues, and deep sense of dread that you can just see as everything just continues on. Maybe it's a friendly bear. What if it's a friendly man? That's worse. I feel for them. I truly find this to be one of the most interesting offshoots from the original question, because under patriarchy, men are meant to be protectors and providers, right? So what you'd think is that you would automatically, especially as a man, that you would be choosing a man that a woman would actually end up in the woods with as opposed to a bear, because they're meant to protect and provide for them, right? Right? This is all coming from a place of having a paternalistic response about your daughter, your girlfriend, your wife, your cousin, your whatever. You know, this almost ownership sort of thing in a way. And of course, there are some people that are saying that men are only choosing bear because they want to make sure that they don't get into a fight in their relationship or whatever. And honestly, because this debate has been going on for such a long time, I would nearly guarantee that some guys were indeed choosing this option. However, there are indeed people that have still been choosing man.
Mitch, would you rather leave Romy in the woods with a bear or a guy?
It's always going to be a guy over a bear.
It's kind of creepy though.
90% of all guys are probably like decent people.
Yeah,
and so the chances are way higher than a bear.
And then the questions that come after that are incredibly telling.
You find a guy in the woods and it's a good guy?
I think 99% of guys are
They're not just like, hey, I'm with this child and I'm going to kill the child.
But if they're in the woods...
I just think survival rate is much higher with a man.
Interesting.
It could also be interpreted that if a man actually chose a bear in this scenario, that would be a bit of a self-tell, right? Because it's like, well, I can't trust myself if there was a young, pretty woman in the woods and I was alone with her, and if the social contract of everybody else watching me wasn't in place. It could be interpreted that way, and also it could just be the fact that they themselves wouldn't do anything, so they'd be like, well, of course I'm going to pick a guy because I trust myself, I wouldn't do anything, so why would anybody else? It could be literally that simple, but the whole thing is they're not really realizing the whole dark underbelly, and we want them to understand the dark underbelly. A lot of us like to think that we've moved on from this sort of possessiveness when it comes to relationships or parental figures or anything like that, right?
So you were guided by latent chivalry, a tool of the patriarchy to extract my undying gratitude?
Mm-hmm. You know, most people just say thank you.
I didn't want to be rescued.
But what I reckon is also being heard when women actually hear their partner or their father or whoever say that they would choose a man instead of a bear to be with them in the woods. What they're actually hearing is, you don't care if I get essayed, if I get raped, if I get tortured, if I get anything bad happening to me. I thought that you, as my male figure in my life, were meant to protect me, and you don't care what happens to me. Because we've still been taught all of this paternalistic stuff, right? We've been raised under patriarchy, so of course we think this way. Because think about it, it's always been about my girl, hands off my woman, every song ever being about mine, possession over women. And like, we've fought against that for such a long time, and then when you actually have that when it comes to a relationship, it's like, what are you doing? Oh, you're actually tossing me away because you actually don't value me then, because you don't care if another man like does anything to me. You don't care that I'm alone with another man. And I think that is another conversation. So if you want to have a video about that, I'm very keen to make it because I found this fascinating.
Myself that I'm conscious of?
I'm not getting any of that. I feel what can only be described as admired, but not ogled. And there's no undertone of violence.
Mine very much has an undertone of violence.
Let's have a little chat about safety work. Lisa Seguera, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, I have tried 10 times now. They wrote an amazing piece for The Conversation. It's linked for you down below. I highly recommend you check out the whole article. They've actually conducted research on misogynistic online groups and has explored how men engage in acts against women that reinforce gender inequality. One of my favourite quotes, women's view of men is also coloured by their non-violent actions that harm women. Clearly, bears also do not contribute or uphold systemic sexism and misogyny, but most men do. I've seen this IRL, I've seen it in my comment sections, I've seen it in other people's comment sections, I've seen it everywhere really, where you've got good guys that, you know, they aren't doing anything wrong, right? But the thing is that they're not speaking up when they see other small injustices happen. Say, for example, when it comes to the dress code thing that I talked about, when it comes to workplaces and stuff, and the male dress code is easy, and then the female's dress code is actually incredibly, like, stringent on anything, and the guys are just like, just look at each other and, like, chuckle a bit. But Those are the opportunities to actually be the ally that we need and actually speak up against the systemic issues. It's all of these small little things that are happening around the place. Like, say you're in a meeting and then none of the women have been able to speak because all of the men are speaking over them, right? And so you say, I would really like to hear from so-and-so. So then you can pick on people and actually help them have their voices elevated. I've been incredibly fortunate to work for amazing men that do this sort of stuff. And indeed, when it comes to my boss as well. And it's this sort of stuff that genuinely makes such a huge difference. And you may think that will have terrible repercussions for my career. People actually admire them a lot more and they respect them a lot more for the fact that they've spoken up. Their colleagues do, their bosses do, and they know, oh, okay, if I've got questions about something, I know that I can go to them. As girls, as women, we put so much effort into making sure that we are not going to be victimized at any point in our day, in our night, in our general lived lives. It's the same as I always encourage people, especially women, to not share where they live, to not share when you're out and about, when you're actually out and about. So say, for example, if you're on holiday or if you're camping or like literally wherever, even whenever I go to a market or wherever I go, I never share where I am when I'm there. I only share when I'm actually home and safe. Also, because I've got a public facing job, there is no way that I'm going to be trying to share with people where I am because people can be very scary, and I've dealt with stalkers in the past and I never want to deal with that again. Even for people without public platforms, this hypervigilance is something that has been baked into us since infancy. I'll show you a very easy visual example for this. A study was published where 571 participants were asked to look at 16 images from different university campuses. They were then told to imagine themselves walking through each of these areas and asked to click on any areas of the photos that caught their attention using a heat map tool. This is where the men looked, and this is where the women looked. So as you can see, the difference here is striking. Women are always on the defensive, and that's not to say that men aren't checking those spaces either, but most of their gaze is focused on the straight road ahead, not the danger that lurks in the shadows. From these maps, it became clear that men tended to focus on the path in front of them or a fixed object like a light or a garbage can. By contrast, the women focused considerably more on the potential hazards in the periphery of the images, like bushes and dark areas off the path. Literally, since infancy, as girls, we've been taught to always be on the defensive, to make sure that you're monitoring how you're dressing, how you're acting, if you're ever asking for it, to literally have internalized all of this messaging. I've talked about this sort of stuff here. We're taught since infancy that victim blaming culture is so rife that we have to blend into it. If a woman says that she's actually choosing the man to bump into in the forest, well, she's asking for the consequences of that, right? What I want to know is, how have people not made this correlation yet? But also ask yourself, how many people who say you should choose the man also do the victim blaming, also start saying to people, well, of course something bad's going to happen to you if you go out dressed like that. Well, you're asking for it if you're out walking alone. You're asking for it if you go to a club. You're asking for it if you're doing literally anything, such as being friendly to someone. How have you not seen like the direct issue here?
Having to act tough like we don't feel pain, but I know men. And men feel. Whatever it is that's bothering you, that's too painful or too difficult or scary to say out loud, write it down, because today, lads, is all about
burying their feelings. They're literally burying their feelings.
Everybody hates rejection and nobody wants to feel lonely. Men are actually really sad by the fact that men weren't being chosen in this hypothetical situation. Even if on some level they can actually understand it because they've heard the stats, they've heard all of this stuff, there's still a part of you which is like, okay, so all of us, myself included, I'm seen as a threat. And, you know, we know that we're dealing with a loneliness epidemic. Like, there's the rise of lonely single men. There's all of this stuff that we're very well aware of, right? And so this is just another example of rejection, quite simply. And so some people have gone down the very angry and terrifying route, and then other people are just internalizing it. And it is like, I'm genuinely very sympathetic to people that are feeling like really dejected and actually hurt by the fact that people aren't choosing men over a bear, because you would think, because you would like people to think that you are a safe option, that you are someone that people can trust because you care about humans as well. And it's been taught and modeled for centuries at this point that a woman is the emotional outlet for a man, a woman is the nurturer, a woman is the person who can actually see the real him, because men aren't allowed to actually share their emotions and stuff with each other. Still, we're dealing with a lot of toxic masculinity right now. It's been on the rise in Australian schools. It's very scary what's been happening over in Australia. I know I've brought it up in the last video, but really it's quite worrying. And if their mums have said stuff to them like, oh, whoever lands you is going to be so lucky, and then to be rejected on dates, to have something like this come up to actually be genuinely struggling, yeah, I'm not surprised that this is actually making men feel really sad and very dejected. And that's also why I kind of worry about this feeling, because the red pill people really weaponize this loneliness, this fear, this sadness, and like this lack of self-confidence that it creates, because I think a lot of us can actually really relate to these feelings of rejection and sadness and then feeling incredibly alone. And trying to put myself in someone else's shoes, if people were just like, well, I'd choose a bear over you any day, and then it's like, how would that not eat you up a little bit, at least, right? And this is where I, same as many other people, have been talking about the need for really good male role models. And the thing is that there are those people out there. It's just they're not super bombastic. They're not super clickbaity or anything. They're genuinely like kind of calmer people, and that doesn't really work so well for the algorithm, and you don't make as much money from all of that. But there are amazing content creators that I've talked about in the past, and you've shouted out some other really good ones, so I will indeed link them here if there are guys that are actually looking for that. If you've made it this far into the video, like honestly, thank you. I really do genuinely applaud it, because I know that this is a very confronting and introspective topic.
Take them to a nice, comfortable place below deck, and, you know, they can't refuse because of the implication.
Oh, okay. You had me going there for the first part. The second half kind of threw me.
Well, dude, think about it. She's out in the middle of nowhere with some dude she barely knows. You know, she looks around her. What does she see? Nothing but open ocean. There's nowhere for me to run. What am I going to do? Say no?
Okay, that seems really dark.
No, it's not dark. You're misunderstanding me, bro.
I think I am.
Yeah, you are. Because if the girl said no, then the answer obviously is no.
No.
But the thing is she's not gonna say no. She would never say no because of the implication.
How bad of a world are we creating if we're raising girls to be scared of men? The real question should be, how can we create a world where women don't have to be scared of men in order to not have to teach their daughters these sorts of things? Like, what can happen to help change that? Sadly, the statistics don't lie, and tragically it's actually worse than the statistics say, since so much actually goes completely unreported. So clearly it's those issues that really need to be addressed, but actionable stuff that we can all do is to drop victim blaming and slut shaming mentalities, because when you've actually got this sort of stuff going on, nobody is actually going to believe any victims that come forward. There is no power given to the people that are actually going to be victimized, more likely to be victimized. This is just the very tip of the iceberg to actually let victims actually speak and be believed, and we need to change the systems for reporting to make it less terrifying and like life-threatening genuinely for people to come forward. And like I said, there are resources in the description box, but when people are like, well, you should have gone to the police, you should have reported this sooner, you should have done this, that, none of that is actually helping to make the world safer. None of that is helping women more likely to choose the man over the bear. And I've talked about it so many times on this channel, but genuinely listening to people, hearing them out, absorbing it, and processing that as opposed to just having a knee-jerk reaction, that is something I think so many of us really need to work on. And it's kind of one of the reasons that I've struggled quite a bit when it comes to short form, because people can often like just think of something out of context, and it's like, no, I think that we really need to process things a bit more, and we need to actually try and come from a place of learning and understanding, because I've stressed this so many times, we all have different lived experiences. Because the root of the issue is, why are people not wanting to listen to the reasons that they're actually giving for picking the bear? Because when someone makes a decision, when someone says no, we should absolutely just respect that and be like, okay. When people are refusing to accept the answer of no, you see how dangerous this is, right? Because this is where we've seen people actually fall into those coercion tactics when it comes to their responses. Coercion does not mean consent. Okay, I'll just leave it as that. I think that you can fill in the rest, right? Because I cover these sort of topics so heavily, I know from the surveys that you've completed for me, I know from the comment sections, just how common this stuff sadly is. And this is where I think that we really need to actually work together, all together. And also, guys, please hold your friends accountable, please hold your work colleagues accountable, and also have a bit of self-reflection. Like, honestly, it's not a bad thing to do. I've said this for so many years, but people can always learn, change it, grow at literally any age. So to quote Philip DeFranco, pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts? Because I genuinely do want to know. I don't need to know if you chose the man or the bear and all of your reasons why. I just want to know what you think can actually help to solve this problem. And I do also want to know, if you've got a favourite forest that you've ever been to, because, you know, you've been stuck in the forest this whole time. I've been showing you beautiful forests this whole video, you know, to try and break up the scariness of the real topic at hand. I would really, really like to know, because when I was a kid, I still remember going to a bluebell patch in a forest, and like that was one of the most magical experiences. Same as seeing like little squirrels. Like when Brandon and I went to London, we saw squirrels. That was all that we wanted to do when we were there, as opposed to like going to see all the sights. And for my next video, we're diving into the topic of growing up average with that survey that you completed as well. And also, I really want to say a huge shout out to everyone who follows me on Instagram and also sent me all of these memes and everything when it comes to the man v bear response, because that was very helpful and also made me giggle a lot. So I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you again next time. Bye! By the way, do you like my black bear inspired look today? I was just sort of channeling black bear having a picnic in the woods. These are indeed meant to be ears, so